Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. With just 48 days to go, my gosh, think about that, just 48 days to go before Election Day. Vice President Kamala Harris has now given her, wait for it, second national news interview. The courage. This time, the Democratic nominee sat down with a panel of National Association of Black Journalists members. Remember that group? The NABJ? That cross-examined Trump in an effort to extract his jugular? Guess what? It went a little different. Went differently when Kamala Harris sat down with them. Politico acknowledging today, which has been completely in the tank for Team Harris, acknowledging, quote, she did not break much ground or stray far from her talking points. Maybe it's because of the pathetic display of journalism that came her way. Honestly, I don't even know if we can blame this one on Kamala Harris. I blame it on you. I blame it on you, Politico, and other journalists I've never heard of who completely fell down on the... You were pathetic. Do you remember that question they asked Trump to kick off his appearance there? Basically, why are you such a raging racist? We know you hate black people. Why are you even here? And how did it go when Kamala Harris sat down? Here's one example, courtesy of Jaron Keith Gaynor of The Griot.
Republicans have at times weaponized you laughing in campaign ads, for example. Why is joy important to you to insert into this election? What do you make of Republicans using that as a way to suggest that you're not a serious candidate?
Well, sometimes I think, and I'll say to whoever the young people are who are watching this, there are some times when your adversaries will try and turn your strength into a weakness. Don't you let them. Don't you let them. Oh, my God.
She looked at the camera for that.
In the American people. I find joy and optimism in what I see to be our future. I find joy in the ambition of the people. I find joy in the dreams of the people. I find joy in building community. I find joy in building coalitions. I find joy in believing that the true measure of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but who you lift up.
We already used that line.
And I think we should all find joy.
I find no joy. No, I don't find any joy in the thought that that woman could be our next president. The question was, why is joy important to you? What in the actual F? How does somebody even pretend that that is journalism? 7 different ways that Vice President Harris finds joy. And God, you've got to see it on YouTube. Go to the YouTube feed because she's looking at the journalists, and I use that term very loosely and in quotes, giving her answer. And then, when she gives her big answer, okay, sometimes when your adversaries will try to turn your strengths into a weakness, when she says, don't you let them. She looks right into the camera, because she thinks she's our mamala, thanks to Drew Barrymore. And she really thinks everything she says is profound. That's why she says it the way she does. And when she hasn't been heavily coached, memorize this note card, that's what we get. I find joy in everything. Again, most of the fault is on this so-called journalist, Jaron, try harder. Jaron, you might need to go back to school to figure out how to ask a proper question. This is unbelievable. Her joy, that's exactly the type of substantive policy discussion the American people need to hear in order to inform their decision on Election Day, right? How is that going to inform them when they have those kitchen table conversations about how they're going to pay their electric bill and their grocery bill and their gasoline bill? Well, she's joyful. She finds joy in the ambition of people, in the dreams of people, in building community, building coalitions, believing that the true measure of the strength of the leaders is based not on who you beat down, but who you lift up, a line written for her by her campaign experts. We all heard it before. She keeps saying it. She likes it. She only has one gear, repeat as I was told, or empty filler emptiness. I find joy in welcoming my first guest today, and that's Dave Rubin. He's here to discuss all this and more. You know, he was supposed to be on the show 2 weeks ago until they called him a Russian stooge and was referenced in an indictment about a Russian influence campaign for some company he did some work for on the side. Rubin has not been accused of any wrongdoing whatsoever. He just got pulled into this thing by someone who may or may not have known she was working for Russians. So he joins me in his first interview since that news broke. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Did you know that there is nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right. There's a massive amount of money that this lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months. If the president is able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like we did during COVID. But there's hope. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group can be an inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting MK to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax-advantaged status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to potentially tank the dollar further. Protect your financial future right now. Text MK to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold. Dave, great to see you. He's hosted the Rubin Report. Welcome back.
Megyn, it's good to see you. And I just want to put two things out there to begin this. Number one, you're the only person I'm going to talk about this nonsensical Russia indictment about. I'm going to do this one time with you. You can ask me anything, and then I'm moving on. And two, I find joy in sniffing glue while listening to Kamala Harris. That's the only way I can get through it. Truly, truly. We are out of Elmer's over here. It's been a very long day.
Okay, we'll get to the Russia nonsense in a bit, because honestly, this is a bunch of bullshit. So we'll just put it to bed in a bit. But let's start with the news that actually does affect people's lives. And that is, we're about to elect a moron, potentially, as president of the United States. I'm deeply, deeply concerned. But let's fixate for, if we can, on the so-called journalists who are asking her questions. I referenced it. Remember, it wasn't the same panel, but remember the same group, NABJ, and their first question to Donald Trump. Here it is.
I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Okay, so that's how they treated Donald Trump when he was there. I played you that one question that they asked her about her joy. Here's another one from Politico. Watch this.
We've seen school closures, parents worried about their kids leaving the home because of racist conspiracy theories that I won't repeat here, but they have been repeated by leaders on the Republican side. From your perspective, is this just a case of irredeemable racism that can't be mitigated by any rational action, or is this a situation in which a federal response could help this community heal?
It's a crying shame. I mean, my heart breaks for this community. When you are bestowed with a microphone that is that big, there is a profound responsibility that comes with that. That is an extension of what should not be lost in this moment, this concept of the public trust. To then understand what the public trust means. It means that you have been invested with trust to be responsible in the way you use your words, much less how you conduct yourself. And especially when you have been and then seek to be again President of the United States of America. I know that people are deeply troubled by what is happening to that community in Springfield, Ohio. And it's got to stop.
There's so much in there, Dave. So first of all, it's just a
That's
word
exactly
on the so-called
what I was
reporter.
gonna say.
We're going to dissect it. We have plenty of time. But let me just tell you, the person asking that question is Eugene Daniels, works for Politico. He's head of the White House Correspondents Association. He's at the top of it. He is the same guy who accused Brian Kilmeade of racism because of some absolute nothing that was misunderstood and then had to walk it back when, Brian was like, what are you talking about? So he gets her in front of him. And his question is, we've seen parents worried about their kids leaving the home because of racist conspiracy theories. I'm not going to repeat them. We cut out the part where he specifically referenced Trump and Vance, but he did, trust me. From your perspective, is this just a case of irredeemable racism that can't be mitigated by any rational action? Eugene, tighten it up, please. Or is this a situation in which a federal response could help this community heal? What the federal response is what caused the problem, Dave.
Megyn, I don't like to do interviews with a pen in my hand, but you're right. There's just so much here. I had to scribble things down as she was talking.
Yes.
First off, how dare she talk about the public trust? A woman who at the debate barely 10 days ago lied about Trump's involvement in Project 2025, lied about her position on fracking, lied about Trump and a national abortion ban, lied about Trump and IVF. The list, lied about very fine people. The list goes on and on. But the thing is, when you're critical of this quote unquote journalist and you're critical of this quote unquote presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, it's like these people are exactly perfect for what they are. There are very few journalists left, and you have this woman who does not stand for anything. So she's just a piece in a machine to see if the machine can fool us all one more time. We were apparently fooled, or at least I suppose 81 million people were fooled when Joe Biden was elected last time and they told us he was perfectly fine. For some reason, I think you were talking about his cognitive ability even before he was elected last time. But they just want to see how much nonsense they can put out there, how they can launder the lies, because that's exactly what they are doing. If he's concerned that parents don't want their kids going out in urban areas, it has nothing to do with the crazy racists. It has something to do with the fact that the Democrats, because it's all blue cities and states that it's happening in, are scaling back the police, are allowing drugs on the street, are not arresting people, et cetera, et cetera. But they never want to look in the mirror and think, my God, maybe we are the baddies. Maybe we are the ones who have led to some of this stuff. And then she just gets out there and just gives, as you pointed out, prepackaged meaningless drivel. You know, there was another line, and you can stop me if you're going to show the clip, but we played it on my show this morning, where they ask her about some of the issues related to protection with her and Trump. And she's like, well, so many people are afraid of themselves, even in Florida with the don't say gay law.
Yeah, we do have it. Stand by.
You do have, all right. So I'll pause on that one, yeah.
Let's watch.
Do you have full confidence in the Secret Service to protect all of you?
I do.
You feel safe, you and your family?
I do. But, I mean, you can go back to Ohio. Not everybody has Secret Service. And there are far too many people in our country right now who are not feeling safe. I mean, I look at Project 2025, and I look at, like the don't say gay laws coming out of Florida. Members of the LGBTQ community don't feel safe right now. Immigrants or people with an immigrant background don't feel safe right now. Women don't feel safe right now. And so, yes, I feel safe. I have Secret Service protection. But that doesn't change my perspective on the importance of fighting for the safety of everybody in our country.
Keep going.
It's such epic drivel. I am in Florida right now. You can say gay. Watch this. Gay. DeSantis's goons aren't showing up. Was that pretty good? That was a pretty gay, right?
With a little flair.
DeSantis's goons are not bursting through the door, right? It's just nonsense. I know a lesbian in Hialeah. She's flourishing right now. It's pure drivel, but this is what they do with everything. There's no right that a gay person doesn't have here. Has this woman ever been to South South Beach. It's the most annoyingly gay place on the planet. But they want to keep people in perpetual fear of a man who literally presided over a presidency where he had lowest all-time black unemployment. He announces it at the State of the Union, and they basically boo him. They have everything backwards, and these people are not journalists. They are activists, and they should be ignored and mocked, and people should watch the Megyn Kelly show.
Meanwhile, I don't even know what this so-called journalist is asking her. Is this a case of irredeemable racism that can't be mitigated by any rational action? What? Or, okay, I'm waiting for choice B because I reject choice A in its entirety to the extent I understand it. Choice B is this a situation in which a federal response could help this community heal? What are you saying? What kind of federal response do we need to the alleged racism in terms of you're eating our cats in Springfield? Do we need, like, this is the way the press corps feels. It's so indicative of what we're dealing with in the national media and why people can't stand them.
Megyn, can I tell you something that's going to really scare you right now? You mentioned at the top of the show there are only 48 more days to the election. It's like, no matter who wins, do you think any of this gets better after? We are just on the slide with these lunatics. I actually can give you the one version where things do get better, which is that if Trump wins by a landslide, I think there's a chance for like a resurgence of true Americana and people realizing we have to let go of some of this stuff. But they are going to just... No. The media will always do its thing, but I think a certain set of sort of marginal people might be like, you know what? Maybe let's let go of some of this woke craziness and let's go forward. The media will be thrilled if Trump is president because it gets them ratings. I mean, that's kind of the deal in hell that has been forged here between Trump and these people, which is why they all used to love Trump and now they hate him, but they kind of want him back because it's good for clicks. But it's just watching these people do these interviews. It's so profoundly embarrassing. And even the way they speak to him, you know, I've interviewed Trump. You've interviewed him multiple times. Why is it that when I interviewed Trump, I scribbled a couple lines down and then I just asked him what I was thinking when I was sitting there? You know, why is it that you've been able to actually confront him on important issues and still get a follow-up interview with him? Because he's willing to do that. And yet look what they are doing with, again, a woman that I would say is just an avatar for the Democrat Party. It's not, no one's really voting for Kamala Harris. You're just voting for someone that I suppose is reverse Trump. She does not stand for anything other than the Democrats attaining power, or I should say retaining power.
I love that the weigh in by this guy, Eugene Daniels of Politico, is about the alleged racism in Springfield, as opposed to the fact that she caused the Haitians to be there in the first place. Their policies are what let all of these people into the country. Why isn't that the question, Eugene, to figure out whether she's got any regrets about dumping all of these people on a small town that obviously cannot handle them? People have died as a result. Eugene, you might want to bring that up. Instead, what we get is this ridiculous question and then her fake profundities, which are like fingernails on a chalkboard, Dave. This is great. When you are bestowed with a microphone that is that big, there is this concept of the public trust. To then understand what the public trust means, it means that you have been invested with trust. She is an empty vessel. There is nothing there to hold on to. She will be filled by whatever top, quiet, behind-the-scenes Democrats want her to be filled with. And the rest of us, like we do right now, will have no idea who's actually president.
Bingo. I mean, that's why I'm saying she's an avatar for this thing. What did the Democrats need? You know, this was the obvious end of where the Democrats were going to be after the last 10 years of insanity. When you put together a coalition based on oppression and all these competing interests and all of these things, it's not based in principle. It's based in sort of keeping everyone kind of hating each other all the time and mostly hating the other side, as opposed to putting forth a positive vision for the country. So Kamala Harris can't honestly explain any of her positions because none of the positions make sense, right? She is now for or against everything she used to be for or against. So who is Kamala Harris? Nobody knows other than, I think it's fair to say, she is someone who basically orchestrated a coup against the sitting president of the United States and is now just pushing forward to make sure that the Democrats retain power. That's it. She can't answer anything honestly, because I truly don't believe she has any coherent set of views. And the media, I mean, again, this is why you and I and people like us are always focused on the media. If the media would just do an honest job with her, as opposed to what we just saw there, you might be able to point some of that out and then people would see it. Except the media, these people know that their job is not to do that. It is just to prop her up so we can stop the orange man.
Mm-hmm. Just get her across the finish line. The other difference between Trump's appearance before this group and Kamala's, well, I guess this story involves Trump's appearance before the NABJ. When he went in front of this group, he used the now infamous term, black jobs. Remember this? SOT 12.
A lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
First of all, you gotta love Trump. Appearing before the National Association of Black Journalists, a lot of people in this room are black. they're laughing. So he makes this comment, right? Which ultimately leads to a press meltdown. You can imagine it. We didn't do a buttered sot, but everybody knows what it would sound like. It sounds an awful lot like this, what Michelle Obama said at the DNC. Watch.
I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs.
Oh, they loved it. And Joe Biden, too, thought this is a great opportunity. He said something inappropriate. I'm going to jump on board. Let's see.
Of course, here's what he thinks of black jobs. I love his phrase, black jobs. It tells a lot about the man and about his character.
And then you know what happened. Joe Biden came out this past week, and here's what he did. SOT 15.
With your help, in just 3.5 years, we created over 2 million new black jobs for black Americans.
Whoa, what?
I'm out of glue. I'm going to have to start sniffing this thing.
I hate everyone.
Look, I will give them a slight, I'll try my best right here to give them like the slightest bit of credit. That saying black jobs in and of itself, the phrase black jobs is obviously somewhat ridiculous, but his next sentence out of his mouth, he meant any jobs. The point was that if they are, and this is just true, it's supply and demand, this is basic economics. When a whole bunch of new people come in, if you expect them to work, they are probably going to take jobs from certain people. That is what he was trying to say. He was not saying, no, black people have to sell shoes and white people are allowed to do real estate. Like, obviously
saying
not.
Jobs for black people, jobs filled by black people.
Right. And I guess we should not be surprised there by Biden mumbling and, stumbling through that thing. I mean, that's just
no meltdown.
The fact that they're even letting, yeah.
I didn't see the press melting down. I see Michelle Obama send out a tweet saying, I condemn, I don't like it. Of course, it's just the media failures are epic. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And it is essentially the equivalent of a red carpet rolled out in front of her right to the Oval Office. That's what they hope. That's what they intend. And they don't care how empty-headed she is. She's not Trump and she's not a Republican. I mean, I think they'd be doing this even if it weren't Trump, even if it were Nikki Haley, they'd be doing this.
Absolutely.
I've listened to so many podcasts and more conservative newscasters and so on to this day complaining about J.D. Vance being on the ticket. If he had only selected Nikki Haley, he wouldn't be having these problems. Trump would be running away with it now. You're wrong. Your prediction, like they did in 16 and 20, the Republican Party, well over 95%, will come home for Trump. Getting Republicans to the polls and getting them motivated will not be a problem. She will motivate them. It's not, and Nikki Haley wouldn't have motivated them more. Yes, there are some independents. Nobody votes because of the vice presidential candidate. That's really not what drives people. Maybe it gives you a teeny tiny edge, like in a state like Pennsylvania, if you pick the hometown guy. But on the national ticket, it's a fantasy.
Well, look, Megyn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just briefly, the point is that the reason that they hate Trump is not because they think he's racist and not because they think any of the things that they say about him or anything else. The reason they really hate Trump is because he fights back, and he fights back appropriately, and he's taught a whole bunch of us to fight back as well and see some of the stuff that maybe we didn't want to see. So it's like when John McCain was running against Barack Obama, nobody in their right mind thought John McCain was a racist, but suddenly everyone thought he was a racist. Or when Mitt Romney was running and he bungled that line about binders full of women, suddenly everyone thought he hated women. Nobody thought he hated women the day before. And then Trump came around and was just like, I am not playing by any of those rules. So Trump taught a whole bunch of us that. And that's not only why they want to get rid of Trump, but that's why there are all these bills. California just signed the censorship law. It's why big tech is always attacking us, because more and more people have woken up. And I would say the silver lining to all of this is the proof's in the pudding. Look at the numbers of shows like yours and mine and many others that are now dwarfing NBC and ABC and everything else. I don't say that to brag as much as people are coming around. And the question really is, what does that wounded animal of the mainstream media do as it reaches its end conclusion, which is well-deserved? I don't know exactly the answer to that.
Well, I mean, maybe it tries to put its finger on the scale at a presidential debate. Maybe they get so desperate that they abandon all pretense of objectivity and go out in a presidential debate and honestly just own the fact that they're in the tank for one candidate. The fallout from that ABC debate continues to boil up. There's no question these two were not impartial moderators, and there's no question that they tried to help Kamala Harris and hurt Trump in that debate. Real Clear Politics was saying that their average has gone up maybe just over half a percentage point for Kamala Harris since the debate. Now, was that because she did well at the debate in terms of memorizing her answers, or was that because ABC helped her, or both? We don't know, but it was minuscule. Still, that in a race this tight, it could potentially help. But I'm sure you've been following this potential scandal, could be fake scandal, about the ABC News whistleblower who's got this affidavit out claiming that ABC News coordinated with the Kamala Harris campaign prior to the debate. The guy says he notarized this document the day before the debate, that he sent a certified copy of it to the Speaker of the House, with whom we are in touch. They have not yet commented one way or the other, but at the Speaker of the House's office, they're going to have tons of mail to go through, and there's a security system for that kind of mail and so on. So not yet, but not necessarily not never. Kamala Harris has said nothing, and ABC News issued a very troubling denial that was basically in response to all these specific charges. It was, we followed the rules of the debate. The rules of the debate did not allow us to give questions in advance. Ignored all the specific allegations.
Exactly.
They agreed with Kamala Harris's team that they wouldn't bring up Biden's mental acuity. They wouldn't bring up her tenure as Attorney General in California. They wouldn't bring up her troubling brother-in-law who was inside the DOJ settling cases allegedly just to dole out favors to Democrat activists on the other side, cases the DOJ could have won. Among other problematic things. And this affidavit, it could be fake. I want people to know that. But such as it is, it alleges that this person supposedly has tapes. Now, in attempting to debunk this story, the Daily Beast came out and said that Gateway Pundit, which is a right-wing blog or website, that Gateway Pundit actually said, this thing looks like an obvious hoax to us. We're not touching it. And I confess to you, when I saw that, I thought, oh, wow, that's pretty extraordinary, because Gateway, they've gotten ahead of their skis on a couple of stories. We went back and checked. What Gateway Pundit said was an obvious hoax was a report over the weekend that this alleged whistleblower, if he exists, had been killed in a car crash. That's what Gateway Pundit says was an obvious hoax and that they weren't going to touch. They did not say the affidavit is an obvious hoax. And we continue to have Bill Ackman, billionaire investor, calling for the SEC to now investigate this publicly traded company, Disney, which owns ABC, demanding Bob Iger, the chairman of Disney, respond to these allegations. And we continue to look at our watches to see if this person really exists when he or she is going to drop these alleged tapes to back it up. So what do you make of the story?
Well, look, I can't speak to the truthiness, as they say, of all of this, but, I read the document, I read the affidavit, and the guy claims that he's worked at ABC for 10 years. A lot of it does feel like it is legit, but you're right, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves on this. But so if we remove the specifics for a second, just think about what we all saw at the debate. When Kamala repeatedly lied about some of the things that I mentioned earlier, even very fine people would be the easiest one. If you were lying on a debate stage and you felt that people were going to fact check you, you'd have to be a little craftier about your lies. But she knew she could just rattle off lie after lie after lie and not be challenged. So that in and of itself would show you she kind of was tipped off that she was not going to be challenged. It doesn't mean that someone walked up to her from ABC and was like, Ms. Harris, we're not going to check you on any of this stuff. But there's subtle ways that some of the messaging could come across, because otherwise you would never be able to lie the way that she lied. So in this instance, because we don't have all of the facts, I would say the proof is in the pudding of everything we saw. And I think objectively, anyone watching that would have seen that clearly they were on the side of Kamala Harris. And every time Donald Trump said something, we discussed this on my show last week, Megyn, not only did they fact check him, but sometimes they weren't even correct in their fact checking. So
we need fact checking of the fact checking.
Right, exactly.
Well, now there is the person who broke this story on X goes by the label Black Insurrectionist. And we went back through his tweets because we were not familiar with this account. I'm now following it. This does not sound like some loon. This guy's posts, actually, some of them are pretty charming. He talked about how he went back and he watched the whole Little House on the Prairie series. Right on, Black Insurrectionist. Love it myself. Anyway, he doesn't seem like, some nut job at all. And now he's actually posting really interesting stories about Kamala Harris's tenure as AG and why that potentially would have been something she would have asked them to steer clear of at the debate. You and I can talk about that in 1 minute, but I just want to stay on the whistleblower story for a second. Somebody was asking this guy, he's not the whistleblower, to make clear, he's the one who broke the story and posted the affidavit of this alleged whistleblower. But now somebody said, what else can you do? Like, you got to get the tapes out, get something out. And he said, look, I've done all I can do. And then he said, I do believe there might be a congressional investigation now. And I think he's basing that on the appearance of Representative Dan Muser, representative from Pennsylvania, who appeared on Fox Business. And he's on the House Small Business Committee, which is kind of interesting. I guess that's why he was on Fox Business. But listen to what he said.
Fortunately, we now have a whistleblower, and I'm going to tell you something, Maria. We're going to do what we can to bring ABC in and have them answer some questions, and as well as have this whistleblower and see what's going on. We need to find out what the truth is. And the thing is this: we all saw it. We actually don't need a hearing to know what we saw.
Now it's getting interesting. Now we might actually have a hearing with subpoena power.
Right. So he actually sort of reiterated what my point was, which is we all saw something. So look, hopefully they will uncover the facts. Hopefully, if we now find out that there were memos or there were phone calls or text messages or whatever, it would be nice to have all of that information. But as people know, when they do these congressional hearings, it's very rare that someone ever gets fired or punished or anything else.
That's not it. Yeah. We don't care about that. I mean, I do care. Somebody should be fired if this happened. I mean, the whole news organization should close if this happened. Let's just make clear. If this affidavit actually turns out to be true, and that's a big if, that organization should close. It should shutter. No, I mean, it cannot continue existing if the rot is that bad. If you cheated on a presidential debate like this, you gave sample questions, like, that was another allegation. You agreed that you wouldn't go there on 3 extremely controversial things about one candidate. You negotiated private terms that would help her and potentially hurt the other guy without the other guy on the call or his reps. You're effed. This is monumental in its size, if true, but it could all be a troll and made up. So that's why none of us want to really get out there on this until we hear tapes and actually see what's happening. This is why it would be great to have a congressional investigation. But the whole point is not to get somebody fired. It's to get the whistleblower in with cover where he can't be fired and he can tell his story with some blanket of protection.
Sure. So of course, it's not about firing one person or something. Of course, we want to uncover the truth. And then again, hopefully all it does is shine, I would say, a brighter light on what we all saw. Because whether we get to the bottom of it or not, we all know what we saw. And what we saw was an absolute farce. And I think you had some choice language last week on the moderators themselves. And it's like that. So we all know that. So focusing on that again and getting people to really, really understand what's going on here. Most Americans, putting aside like the most partisan whack jobs on both sides, most of us, regardless of whether you know who you want to vote for or not, we do want to see an honest debate. Like, we would like to hear them actually argue these things out. We all mostly get that the scale has been tilted one way for a while, but if it's so absolutely blatant and that's fully brought to light, maybe that does change the equation in the country.
I just want the audience to know, there is a principle in journalism where you don't agree to not bring something up. The most you're supposed to assure somebody is, I'll take that into consideration, right? I'll take it into consideration. Like, maybe your interests don't lie in the thing the person's like, please don't ask me about my DWI arrest when I was, 22, and you're talking to a 62-year-old, Senate candidate. That can happen where you're like, who gives a shit, whatever that can happen. But an assurance at a presidential debate that you will entirely avoid not one, not two, but three massive problematic areas for one candidate. And the number one is the sitting president's mental acuity that this candidate now has been accused of covering up. I mean, I'm just saying it could be bullshit, but if that's in any way true, it is a career-ending agreement in multiple careers, because the person who made the agreement would have to be fired and never work in journalism again. And any anchor who then did that, because you'd have to tell the anchors. You can't ask it. Right. We will not be asking about Joe Biden's mental acuity. I can't think that these two would have had, the thought to go after her brother-in-law, even though that wasn't even in the New York Times. Mm-hmm. Maybe they would have asked about her time as AG, because there's a lot of controversy about it. But for sure, the president's mental acuity would have been among the possible topics. And so you would have to tell the anchors, we're not going there, and then explain why. So in any event, it would be a massive cascade of firings and job losses and so on. It's one of the reasons why it just seems so incredible, because why would these journalists take such a risk? They could just help her the old-fashioned way, like what we saw with our eyes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was all so blatant anyway that makes it all the more bizarre. But you're completely right. Look, regardless of whether you like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anybody, whatever they did that they now basically admit to push him out, that, it sounds like that Pelosi and Schumer and probably Obama and Kamala all got together and said, we're going to 25th Amendment you if you don't get out. It's like, why wouldn't there be one question about what was it like for you when the president called you and said that? Like, that actually is more interesting than hearing her, prattle on about being a middle class, growing up middle class or whatever it might be. But yes, you're right. They avoided certain topics. And then when it came to Trump, they went on certain topics, and we all know that.
Now, ABC News is spiraling at the moment because there's been so much negative feedback as a result of that debate. People know, fair-minded people know what they did and just how biased it was and one-sided. And so something kind of interesting happened. David Muir went on the Kelly Ripa show on Monday morning. I don't watch that show. Don't remember him ever making headlines on that show before or doing debate cleanup on that show. But I do think it's interesting that they put him on there. And here's a bit of how that went. Saw 10.
I believe it was our duty to ask the issues that Americans care about. The economy. Are we better off than we were 4 years ago? Immigration. What are you going to do about the border? Why did you wait so long before you acted on the border? Those types of questions. Reproductive rights. Afghanistan. Do you bear any responsibility? Peaceful transfer of power with the next election coming. These are all really important issues. The issues of our time, really. And I always say as a moderator, what the candidates decide to do with that time, you can ask the questions, but they'll answer with whatever they choose to answer with. That's right. And you have to be ready for whatever might come your way, even the most unexpected of moments. As you all know, you know what I'm talking about. Right. And I will say this. All of the noise that you hear afterward about, which candidate won the debate, did the moderators win or lose, that's just noise. Yeah. You all know that. The most important thing to remember is that you all have the power.
Well, see, he's just playing it right down the middle, Dave. Well, let me tell you what that was. That was cleanup in aisle 7 because his ratings are down 12% since the debate, and far more than he's seeing on the competition on CBS and NBC. They both fell a little this week, just as it wasn't, I guess, that busy a news week, but for, the whole assassination thing. Anyway,
that thing, yeah.
But his ratings are down. People are leaving. They're angry. And so he's out there. This wasn't Wednesday after the debate. It wasn't Thursday after the debate. It wasn't Friday. It was Monday because ABC News can see he's in a free fall.
Well, it's also a brilliant way of seeing how obviously they can launder the lies. So we all know what we saw at the debate. We know he's culpable for all of that. And then what do? They put him on an ABC morning show, which I'm fairly certain is not under the news division. It's under the entertainment division, but it doesn't even matter, so that he can just further the lies. He lied, right? We all saw the lies being laundered in real time on the debate. And then he goes on a morning show to lie again even further. It's just nonsense. So it's like, dude, every time you fact check Donald Trump, you had the opportunity to do it for Kamala. So I mentioned very fine people. The IVF one would have been another just slam dunk easy one when she got up there and basically said he wants to stop IVF. He has a law. Why is it that I know these things, right? Like, how is it that I knew that Donald Trump, 3 months ago, had this very nicely worded, for him, particularly nicely worded statement on why families are important and how he wants to help families, and IVF's a way of doing that, and that there are certain challenges that families face and blah, blah, blah. Why is it that I know that he put that up? He's completely for IVF. It couldn't have been clearer. How come I knew that, but David Muir either didn't know that or didn't choose to get in on it? So yeah, you're right. It's cleanup on aisle 7, but again, people are not buying it, which is probably reflected in the ratings.
Yeah, Kelly Ripa and David Muir are very close. She's constantly posting pictures of him on her Instagram, her kissing him. And you know what? That's what happened on that show. She gave him a big, wet kiss without any real questions that would bring back those 12% who just left. And let me tell you something. None of these network evening shows can spare the losses. They're already hemorrhaging in shadows of their former selves. So he can keep doing cleanup in aisle 7, but we know what we saw. And the nerve of him to say, Dave, that we have to do our homework and be expecting the unexpected, and he's like, you all know what I'm referring to. He's referring to the dogs and cats and pets comment by Trump. Yeah. You were clearly expecting, because Lindsay Davis is running around being like, I had seen him make the comments about babies being killed on the tables. I was ready for it. You were not ready for it because you fact checked that story when he was right and you were wrong. And then you didn't fact check her claims about how she's not against fracking and that she made that really clear that she's not against fracking back in 2020, which she did not. She spoke to Joe Biden's position, not hers. These two want to just bathe themselves in glory, pretending that they're not hemorrhaging viewers or credibility, and still rewrite the facts. In this case, the facts about what happened that night, a Tuesday, a week ago.
Megyn, a lot of this stuff used to enrage me, and there's a certain amount of, righteous indignation that comes with this because we want a media that's good. But in a weird way, it's just like, you know what, guys, keep doing it. Keep doing what you're doing. And as I said earlier, more and more of us are seeing it. It's reflective in the ratings. It's reflective in the alt media and everything else. And it's a damn shame because it would be wonderful. And I know you believe this as someone that was formerly in the mainstream media. It would be great if they were doing their job. Imagine if they were doing their job and then every morning you woke up.
Well, remember those 2 weeks when Biden wouldn't get out of office? We had a glimpse. It was just a glimpse, but it was wonderful.
But wouldn't you, truly, I really mean this, for what I do for a living, if I was waking up every morning, day after day, and I was like, boy, there's a little less nonsense to talk about today. I can't just go on and on about the lunacy of MSNBC and what they're doing at the debates and the crazy women on The View. I don't know, maybe my show wouldn't be as interesting or less people would watch, but I'll find something else to do. And
no, I would be fine with that. I would love it. I would love to see an honest press corps. I really would. Yeah. The Democrats are insane enough, and let's face it, the Republicans are nutty themselves in some corners, that we'd have plenty to talk about just to save the country when it comes to policy. I don't need to make my show about the media.
Exactly.
They make me. This kind of irresponsible, quote, journalism, looking at you, Politico, Eugene, makes me have to say something, because this is such a dereliction. What ABC did was a dereliction. People know it. They know they feel bad and they feel pissed off. They might not know exactly why until you forensically deconstruct it. So it's a service to do so. But I'd love to stop talking about these Nimrods and start talking about different Nimrods, because there's so many.
There is no shortage of Nimrods. I think we can all agree on that.
Okay, so that brings me to Kamala Harris and her tenure as Attorney General. Very interesting that that was a line in this affidavit. Again, may or may not be real. But it did bring up something that people weren't really focusing on. Two things: her brother-in-law's troubles at the DOJ, alleged troubles, and her tenure as AG, which we've kind of all just kind of skipped past. She's given us enough problems with her position statements when she ran for president in 2019 and the stuff she's done as part of the Biden administration. We've been focused on that, almost all the media. But she had a whole career in politics before that, including her tenure as AG. And now it's coming back to haunt her. Okay, there is the case of George Gage. Now, George Gage is a very interesting story that was profiled by the New York Times back when it wanted to do honest journalism on her a long time ago when she was running for president. It's amazing. Like, if we could have just had a primary, like who would take over for Joe Biden, we would have seen the resurrection of stories like this. And people could have actually made a choice based on who's most vulnerable, who's the best for the party and the country. But that didn't happen. So we have to rely on this New York Times report from 2019. And she's got her hands all over this case. It began in Texas in 1990, where a man named George Gage married a woman named Wanda. Wanda had 2 kids, one of whom, Marion, was 9. In 1993, they moved to California from Texas. 2 years later, Wanda learned Gage had had an affair, had a love child, and that he'd been stealing money from family funds to pay for that child's support. So it's not working out between Wanda and George. They split up. Wanda and her 2 kids hike it back to Texas. 3 years later, in 1998, the little girl, now she would have been 12, told Wanda that Gage had sexually abused her while they'd lived together. This is the child's allegation. Marion claimed, this is according to the reporting. At first, Marion told Texas authorities where she was living that Gage had, quote, inappropriately touched her, but that he had never had intercourse with her, never tried to have penetration of any kind, and never any kind of oral sex, end quote. Then she wound up telling authorities Gage had raped her. So inconsistent. It was a tumultuous time in Marion's life, a federal appeals court would later say. Around the time she reported the abuse, Marion apparently had attempted suicide on several occasions and spent a significant amount of time hospitalized for mental illness. Texas officials reported the accusations to their counterparts in California, who promptly charged Gage with rape, sexual abuse, and lewd acts. There was no physical evidence linking Gage to any crimes. There were no witnesses to the alleged crimes. Prosecutors in California offered him a deal, 6 years. He rejected it. I'm not a sex offender. Prosecutors sought to ensure that Marion's medical records were not introduced at trial. Why is that? The medical records should help a victim of a sexual abuse crime like this. Mm-hmm. Gage's trial lawyer inexplicably agreed with that. He didn't object. Fine. Let's not enter her medical records into evidence, even though he hadn't seen the content of them. You guys all know, because I just said it, there were inconsistencies in them about this young woman's story. The deputy district attorney, a guy named Christopher Estes, told the court there were no inconsistencies in the records, none, and that Marion's therapist had indicated her patient had always been consistent about the molestation. Gage was tried. The young girl did not testify, but her account was shared through a redacted version of a statement she had made during a preliminary hearing. The jury couldn't reach a verdict. Prosecutors tried him again. Plea negotiations again. Offered him a 3-year deal. Again, he turned it down, saying, I'm not pleading guilty to a crime I did not commit. During the second trial, the young woman testified. No discussion of her medical records at all. She said he had routinely abused her. She said, the mother said that he had physically abused her. And Gage took the stand to defend himself, denying that he had done it, and said that these two had made up these allegations to get back at him for the affair and the love child. Based on the testimony of Marion and Wanda, Gage was convicted by the second jury. The records have never been made public of those medical problems. Gage's lawyers, even today, have never seen them. But when the judge in the case finally got to see them when trying to sentence him, she vacated the conviction and gave him a new trial because she saw she'd been lied to. I'm going to put a pin in the story right here because we have to take a break. Stay with me because Kamala Harris is about to enter this case and it's not good. Don't go away. You did not vote for this economic downturn and the high inflation, but you could be paying for it at the pump, the grocery store, and with growing stacks of unpaid bills. Financial stress can be crushing, and one solution could be donewithdebt.com. Done With Debt created new, aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done With Debt can stand between you and bill collectors. They negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, and stop penalties. And the best news is Done With Debt is accepting new clients right now. But you do need to hurry because some of their debt relief strategies are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Let Done With Debt hit the debt reset button for you and make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 now. Chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Let me pick up where I left off. When last we spoke, a few minutes ago, the judge in George Gage's case, accusing him of sexually molesting and abusing his one-time stepdaughter, was outraged because she took a look at the accuser's medical records in connection with the sentencing after George had been found guilty, and for the first time realized there were all sorts of problems with this young woman's story. She was only looking to see how long the sentence should be. This is the first time she's getting a look at this and realizes that the deputy DA had misled her, that there were lots of inconsistencies in here. She noted that the mother, Wanda, had told a therapist that Mary and the daughter was, quote, a pathological liar who lives her lies, and many other things in here that did not help Marion's accusations. So all of this, according to the Times, was known to the deputy DA when he told the court that there were no inconsistencies. And when the trial judge found out the truth, she was appalled. She threw out the case and ordered a new trial. The deputy DA appealed that ruling and won. The California Court of Appeal promptly reinstated George Gage's conviction, holding that the trial court improperly relied on evidence that had not been introduced to jurors. Unbelievable. Because she looked at it in the context of sentencing and not in the underlying trial, because the deputy DA had said, trust me, there's nothing inconsistent. I'm not going to introduce these. And the other guy didn't object. They said it was improper for her to consider these in reversing the verdict. In 2015, the case reached the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. That's in San Francisco, and that's where Kamala Harris comes in. Her prosecutors went in there and defended George Gage's conviction. They pointed out that Mr. Gage, while forced to act as his own lawyer, he was acting pro se, had not properly raised certain legal issues, including this one, in the lower court. The appellate judges acknowledged that and said, we're going to send this case to mediation, which was a clear signal for Kamala Harris to dismiss this case. The Ninth Circuit, the most liberal court in the land, doesn't like what happened here. She refused. It was balls to the wall to keep George on his way to Leavenworth. The court ultimately had to uphold the conviction because technically this guy, acting as his own lawyer, had failed to raise it. And Mr. Gage, to this day, thanks to Kamala Harris, remains in prison on a 70-year sentence. He's now 84 years old, partially blind, and shares a cell with 7 other inmates. Now, you tell me why that story's not everywhere in this campaign, Dave.
Yeah, Megyn, I mean, you laid out the case very cleanly. The line that really got me there, I'm going to do the newsman thing for a second, but my eyes have been a little weird lately, that the fact that the mother called her a pathological liar who lives her lies on top of all of the other consistencies. inconsistencies. This actually shouldn't surprise anybody because I'm sure most of your viewers remember when Kamala was actually running for president in a primary, when she got into it with Tulsi Gabbard over, people that she had put in jail as Attorney General in California, for smoking pot and other crimes like that. And then Kamala herself has been on video admitting she used to smoke pot back in college. So I think some of her inconsistencies and her sort of inclination to just throw people in jail. I mean, this story, it probably, this is the type of thing where people get a little lost in the weeds and it's like, we're not all lawyers who can decipher every little piece of what happens in a courtroom. But it feels like one of the types of stories that this is probably the type of thing that she did often as an attorney general, right? That she would get a lot of these cases where they'd be like, which way do we go on this? And okay, there was this trial, that trial. And that it seems that she was pretty heavy-handed when it came to prosecuting people and putting people in jail. So hopefully this story will get more coverage.
She railroaded this Black defendant who was not given a fair defense into effectively a life sentence. That's what she did. When confronted with the prosecutor's dishonesty, the fact that this man indisputably did not get a fair trial, and that the only reason he wasn't getting a new trial on appeal is because, acting as his own lawyer, he failed to preserve the issue. She said, full steam ahead, lock him up. That's her. The fact that the press ignores this and that it wasn't raised at the National Association of Black Journalists Association to her on behalf of George Gage is disgusting. It's yet another complete fail and malpractice by the media, who were more obsessed with how she feels joy than why she puts obviously not guilty Black men in jail for life.
It's so interesting because I know you and I don't care about people's skin color, but for the people, the set of people that purport to care about it more than anything else and think that racists are running the country and that are, behind every bush, you're exactly right. You'd think that the Black Journalists Association, or forget the skin color of the journalist, you'd think that any sort of lefty journalist would be obsessed with this. This man is in jail right now in California. Like, does anyone want to look into this? Apparently
not. Maybe now. I mean, he's 84 years old, but this is just awful. Okay, let's turn to Russia. Russia. So about a year ago, the audience knows this because I told them when this story broke, you and I were chatting and you said you might be doing this sort of side gig with this organization that Lauren Chen, who'd been working for The Blaze, was putting together with some podcasters. And I said, don't do it. Did I not say don't do it? I said don't do it.
You did say don't do it. You did, but well, let's give people a little more detail there. It wasn't just don't do it. Basically, what I told you was Lauren Chen, who I've known for about a decade. Your viewers probably know her. She's in the talk space on the right side. I remember meeting her, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years ago at an event I did in Canada. And she was this, young, cute little girl who was doing some online stuff. So I'd known her for quite some time. She came to me and she basically said, hey, I've got this French benefactor who is putting together this network. It's going to be with heterodox thinkers. We're thinking about maybe Tim Pool and Benny Johnson. And she named a couple other people. She said, we'd love for you to be a part. You can do whatever you want. And I basically was like, well, I don't have a lot of time. As you know, Megyn, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm most proud of in all of my career is that I've always remained, since I left sort of the online, the Young Turks world where I had other bosses and the rest of it, that I was, to pat myself on the back for 1 second, I was kind of a pioneer in going independent. You even said that to me years ago. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very, very proud of that. And I helped build technology like Locals to, enable other people to go independent. But I basically said to her, I was like, look, if I do it, I don't have a lot of time. I'll do a very quick show 4 days a week about some silly, viral video kind of stuff. And I asked for what I thought was a crazy number, a crazy amount of money. And in essence, after 1 or 2 conversations, they basically said yes. And I called you the night before. This is what you're referencing. I didn't like the idea that I was doing something kind of just for money, but I was actually. I don't have a problem with capitalism or doing things for money, but I had been so free for so long that I was kind of struggling with it. Should I do it? And obviously, if you're starting a network, let's say you're starting a Daily Wire or you're starting, Blaze or whatever it might be, you're going to pay a premium for talent, obviously, to help you build that brand. But I was struggling with the idea that I was just doing something for money. And you basically said to me, well, then just don't do it. And I learned a lesson, which is listen to Megyn Kelly. Because then a headache happened, which I had no idea was coming.
It turned into just a nightmare. So you did the work, you got the money, reportedly $5 million, and the indictment that came down not of Lauren Chen, she hasn't been indicted, but of the people who started this podcast network called Tenet Media, are allegedly a couple of Russians who work for RT, which used to be called Russia Today. It's state-run media in Russia. Those two have been indicted. And the interesting thing about those two being indicted is, as Andy McCarthy pointed out on his podcast, they're ghosts. They'll never be arrested. It's basically just a way for the DOJ to try to embarrass the conservative podcasters who got pulled into this, even though the indictment itself makes very clear that they had no idea they were working for the Russians, and that all of them maintained, except for one guy who says maybe, according to the indictment, I haven't heard this person respond to it, but everybody says they had editorial independence. No strings were being pulled by the Russians, by Lauren Chen, or by anybody else. But basically, this is the DOJ's attempt to say everyone's a Russian stooge, conservatives are Russian stooges, the Russians are interfering again. Don't trust conservatives; they're Russian stooges. Am I right. Do I have it about right?
You do have it about right. The funny thing to me is when this story broke, whatever it was, 10 days ago, and I read the indictment, I'm so used to reading dishonest things about me that when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this actually is all true. I knew Lauren for all these years. She told me I was working with this French businessman. I'm commentator number one in the indictment for people that want to read it. I'm the one that asked for more information. They sent me what I think now it says is a fake AI bio about this guy with a picture. Maybe you guys have it over there.
It's fancy. It looks fancy.
No, but even that didn't. I was like not satisfied with that. So I asked.
It's kind of fancy.
Yeah. So that's what they sent me. And I said, well, I'd like to talk to the guy. That's what I said to Lauren. All my communications were with Lauren. And clearly the DOJ has all those communications because everything in the indictment was true. And then I got on a Zoom call. Lauren set me up on a Zoom call with a person that I was told was her French benefactor named Edward Grigorian. And now I don't know who I spoke to. I actually have no idea who I spoke to. I don't know what Lauren's intentions were or anything else. Look, we, as the DOJ said to me in an email, look, you guys are the victims here. You guys got completely duped. I completely stand by all of my editorial decisions and everything else. Also, this had nothing to do with Rubin Report. This was a separate show altogether. But I think more than anything else, the headache around this has been that it's like you watch the media, the way they run with these crazy things that you just alluded to this, the way they run with it. And it's like, it's just so profoundly dishonest. And I'm so proud of the work that I've done.
It's a chance to discredit you.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a chance to discredit you and Benny Johnson and Tim Pool. And so they're loving that. Yes, let's do that. That's thrilling. We can take out the legs of anybody they find a threat without actually reading. The indictment makes very clear. I mean, it says, it's crystal clear that Founder 1 and Founder 2, that's Lauren and her husband, work together to, they say, mask the true source of funding, RT, by falsely portraying to commentator 1, that's you, and 2, that's Tim, that this company was sponsored by a private investor named Edward Grigorian. In truth and in fact, this guy was a fictional person. They say, for example, during contract negotiations, commentator 1 requested that Founder 1 provide a profile of the article on this guy. And in response,
that's me.
Founder 1 sent him a one-page profile provided to him, and so on, blah, blah, falsely describing him, blah, 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 blah. And they say that they worked, Founder 1 and Founder 2, worked together to deceive Commentator 1 and Commentator 2, who respectively have the following YouTube following or Twitter followers. So not even the government alleges that you knew. But now, that leads me to the tough questions that people want answered. Number one, now that you know it was the Russian money, do you give it back?
Well, I don't know who I would be giving it back to. The Russians that duped me? I'm not sure. I mean, I'll decide
Donate
what to do
to charity?
With it. I'll probably donate some of it. You know, I've been dealing with like just the immediacy of, you know, lawyers just cleaning up everything with the DOJ. And as you said, I was never accused of anything or anything else. I have an email from them saying that I'm the victim here. So we're trying to figure that out. And I'd be happy to follow up with you on that, either personally or publicly when we figure that out.
Do you
I don't even know
Lauren
what
Chen,
I don't even know what the honest, I did the work. I did a show, and ironically, I'm quite proud of the show. We did a silly show about viral videos where it wasn't even political largely. It was like, fat girl goes into Wendy's and throws hamburger at somebody. It was nonsense. The gimmick of the show,
Dave.
actually. Well, people like that on the internet. That was the show. Yeah.
Did anybody ever tell you what to report, what to say, or what not to report and say?
No, all of my conversations with Lauren, all she kept saying was this: we want heterodox thinkers. We want you to do whatever you want to do. I even said that to you, if you remember specifically our call from way back when, that the only reason I was going to do it, I was like, it's not going to be a heavy lift because I'm going to cover these silly viral videos and do whatever I want. And that's it. Just to be clear about one thing, because it's not quite in there, but just to clean up one thing, they ended the contract with me in May. So it started around October or so. Someone can check the exact date. But they ended it in May, clearly because they were not, whatever it is they wanted out of me, and again, I didn't know any of this, clearly they were not getting it. So it's not as if I've been in contract with them the entire time. They sent me a desist letter, and then I was just like, you know what? This was a headache. I probably should have listened to Megyn in the beginning, and that was it.
So you only dealt with Lauren. You didn't deal with the two people above her because those are two Russians who are named in the indictment who they claim are trying to pull the strings here.
No, Lauren is the only person I ever spoke to, except that she set me up on the Zoom call with this guy that, again, I thought was Edward Gregorian, I think in Paris. And I just don't know who he was. I honestly don't know. I don't even know that the government knows. Was it one of the two people in the indictment? I just have no idea. But she's the only one that I dealt with. I have no idea what her intentions are. Did she know? I simply have no idea.
The indictment alleges she knew. It alleges that she and her husband both knew that they were telling you that it was Edward Gregorian, French guy behind the company, but they were privately messaging to each
Calling
other
them the Russians,
that they
right.
wanted to get paid by the Russians for the work. So were you surprised to read that?
Well, I guess I was surprised in that, to whatever extent I thought I knew her. You think you know somebody. Megyn, think of all the people that you know that do something similar than us. And someone could call you and be like, oh, somebody could call you and be like, I have this person who's really a big fan of what I do and they like what you do and they've got some money and they want to figure out how to build something and heterodox thinking and all of that stuff. I felt that I did my due diligence, especially by talking to the guy. But as you know, that when I called you the night before I signed it, I was still a little, just the idea, again, of doing something just for money was still sticking with me in a little bit of a weird way. But again, it's just crazy to think that I knew this girl for so long and that she was so deep in something so crazy. But I suppose the
allegedly.
DOJ will have more on that. Allegedly.
Yeah, we'll find out. I mean, they're definitely claiming that Lauren and her husband knew and perpetrated a fraud on you and Tim and the others and kept it a secret intentionally. We haven't heard her respond at all. So I assume she's denying. She might be working with the feds. No idea. We'll have to wait to see. Have you spoken with her at all or her husband?
No. My last communication with her, I believe it was May 21st, if I'm not mistaken. They sent us a letter saying they were done.
You don't send the WTF text?
No, because I really, truly, this may sound crazy because it was a lot of money, but I got the email and I was just like, you know what? It was a relief. We're very busy around here. My guys work their butts off. Again, I really enjoyed the show because it was silly and fun. It wasn't really political, so I like doing nonsense. We would show clips of old stand-up comedians and comment on it. Actually, one of the gimmicks of the show was that I wouldn't even know. My staff would pick the videos, so I wouldn't even know the videos we were covering before. We thought that was like a funny way of doing it live, like I'm just watching TikTok nonsense and reacting in real time. But I really felt it was a relief. I obviously I've done okay here, and I was just like, you know what? Forget that money. Let's just go ahead and do other things. And we're building other things even as we speak. Mm-hmm. So I did not even respond
Just to be clear, when you say your guys were choosing the videos, this isn't like these aren't guys controlled by the Russians. These are your guys.
No.
In your life.
I mean, my guys in the morning. No.
Yeah.
My team in the morning. Are you guys controlled by the Russians? No. My guys in the morning literally would be like, I saw this on TikTok. It was literally like fat girl throws hamburger at somebody.
There you go again. The proper term is heavy set.
No, large woman goes to fast food joint and, that.
Look, I just think that no one's going to believe that you're a Russian stooge other than people who hated you to begin with. So I don't feel that you've lost anything in this. In fact, you've gained some money. What you decide to do with it is your business. But if you want to update that, we are here for you. And I told the audience when this broke, I have zero doubt you didn't know anything about this. And then I could vouch for you that you told me that night you told me it was a French or a couple, I can't remember how, but it was French business guys behind this thing as the investors. And the reason I told you I didn't think you should do it was I did not trust Lauren Chen. It wasn't like you were saying Edward seems fake at all. You were not onto that, you know? One other question
Megyn,
I should ask you.
Megyn,
Some people say, like, if you had Googled him,
Yeah.
you would have found out he wasn't real, right? The indictment says Googling him, he doesn't come up. How do you feel about that?
I'm 99% sure I did do some Googling before I asked for the resume, and my feel, and I guess nothing came up or whatever, but there are all sorts of people that have money that do things so that they don't show up. You know, you could just be a private person, and then I just don't know. Like the answer to that is I don't know. But again, I did ask for a resume. I did ask to speak to the guy, and I guess I learned a lesson here.
The next time somebody asks you to partner up, Dave Rubin, what is the proper answer?
Whatever Megyn Kelly says. No, but
it's a
can
trick
I just
question,
say one other
but
thing?
I accept it. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just say one other thing on a personal note, because you just referenced that, yes, of course there's going to be a certain set of people that will never want the truth, and they're just going to use this against me and all that stuff. Okay, fine. That's just the nature of the internet, and I'm not here to censor those people. But I would like to say that it wasn't, you obviously gave a great defense of me, and you had a little inside knowledge, but virtually everyone in our space that should have defended me, or at least said, you know, whatever, did. And you really find out who your friends are in these weird moments. People who or even just, it's not that everyone had to do it publicly or that everyone's a public person, but that people reach out to you and they just check in. And I have to say, like, maybe more proud than I am of building whatever I've built professionally, that I guess I've surrounded myself, and I guess there's a glaring exception, which would be Lauren, with some good people. And that really has been the nice part of this, which I know sounds corny or whatever, but it's the truth.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, it's like, I don't know Tim Pool. He's been on the show one time, but I never questioned that Tim Pool would not voluntarily be a stooge for the Russian, nor you. I don't know Benny at all. But it was just absurd. And I do think that this is a kind of a special space where people are doing something sort of brave and important. And the first instinct should be to question these mainstream narratives about people in this lane, because the left-wing press was too quick to jump all over it and try to paint all of you guys as basically willingly working for RT and hiding it. That was an obvious lie. So I think the audience knows what's what. Great to have you here. I agree with your plan to forget this nonsense and move forward with your great business and awesome show.
What do I owe you? I feel like I owe you something, like tequila at least next time you come over, but that goes without saying.
You're on. Great to see you.
Good to see you,
Dave Rubin, everybody, the one and only. Good for him. That was such nonsense, wasn't it? God, that was bullshit. It's just, look, the feds aren't going anywhere with this. We all know that. They're not going to find these Russians. I don't know what's going to happen to Lauren Chen. Nobody else is going to be indicted. And they got Russia in the news for a few days. So, okay. Okay, up next. Listen, let me tell you why my next guest is important before he gets here. This is a very tight election. It could go either way. Right now, she's up. If you listen to Tom Bevan at Real Clear Politics, it's the tiniest amount, but she's up a little even in Pennsylvania, which is the must-win state. But it could go Trump's way. You know, he was interviewing Sean Trendy of Real Clear Politics on their show yesterday, and Sean Trendy was saying, yes, you know, I'd give the advantage to Trump just because he's got the momentum and he usually underpolls, but only by a goose feather. So that's the most optimistic version right now for Trump. It could go either way. So I've been thinking to myself, what does that mean? If she wins, we're going to have to fight these battles on our own. We're not going to give up on all of our battles. Hell no. In fact, we're going to have to double down on our battles. So what does that mean? It means we need really smart people coming up with smart, effective game plans to tear down the problematic things that we see all around us. You know, the objection to closing the border. That would be one thing. And we've already seen some clever solutions to that down in Texas, for example, with Governor Abbott and working with Governor DeSantis to ship some of these migrants to places like Martha's Vineyard, immigrants in that case. illegal. In any event, you see what I'm saying? We got to do ends around the powers that be if this election goes the wrong way. And that is where Robby Starbuck comes in. You might or might not know that name. He's up next. He is not single-handedly, but in a very important way, dissecting the pernicious DEI programs at some of our biggest and most successful corporations, like just Robby. And he's done it so cleverly. It's been so effective. And he's going to tell you exactly how he's been doing it. And it's a model for a go-forward basis, I guess, frankly, no matter who wins, because these private companies aren't just going to take it out if Trump wins, though I think Trump will take DEI out of the federal government as he tried to the last time. That still leaves private industry to deal with. And that's where Robby comes in. He explains right after this. Grand Canyon University. It's a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, and they believe we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 330 academic programs as of December, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. You know how much my family and I love our dogs. Yes, even sweet Strudwick. I can't even imagine life without them. They've got a great life. They're lucky. But some dogs aren't. And that's why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue. It's the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all of these animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it now for more than 45 years. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions, and giving can bring tax benefits too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but we would like other dogs who need love to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. When you're bestowed with a microphone, there is this concept of public trust. To then understand what the public trust means. It means that you have been invested with trust. Deep Thoughts by Kamala Harris. Just sorry, had to be resurrected again. OMG. Okay, welcome back to the Megyn Kelly Show. Now we get to Robby Starbuck. I'm excited to bring him to you. So many more corporations than you know have adopted this DEI nonsense, which is very divisive and, in most cases, illegal, because it documents and makes formal a policy out of race-based preferences, which is not okay. Not in college admissions and not in corporate America. But now they're secretly ending DEI, corporation after corporation. Huge, huge companies like Lowe's, John Deere, Harley-Davidson, and more have all dropped their DEI practices this past summer. And one man is behind it all. That man, Robby Starbuck, joins me now. Robby was on with us in March on episode 741 discussing his eye-opening documentary, The War on Children, which exposes the sexualization of children. Robby, welcome back to the show. Bravo, bravo, sir. Thank you for doing what you are doing. What set you on this path, and what led you to believe that you could single-handedly extract this terrible ideology from some of the biggest corporations in the country?
Thank you for having me, Megyn. And, you know, I guess what's responsible is a couple things. Number one, I still have the naive belief that you can do anything you put your mind to in America. And maybe that's a good thing. There's still a few of us who believe that. But secondary to that is that I'm the child of a family that lost everything to communism, you know. And so for me, I see the path very clearly. America's headed down if we don't stand up. And if I'm being really candid, one of the great regrets of my life is that there was a long period where I had the belief that there's people out there fighting for us, that we've got a whole party that, that's their job. They're out there, they're going to fix these issues, right? Wrong, so I've disabused myself of the idea that we're going to be saved by a politician. And that's not to say elections are not important. This election is critical. And I've said so a million times for a million different reasons. However, even if we elect Trump, that is not just this, fix-all that's going to just fix everything that's gone wrong in our country. The truth is, America and Americans, in a singular sense, we've lost our sense of responsibility and identity and what we're supposed to be responsible for. The formation of our country, when you go really deeply into the ideology of our founders, a lot of it was predicated on the belief that the individual American would stand up for their own liberty. If you're unwilling to do that and you're unwilling to stand up for what you believe is right, you're going to end up in a really, really dangerous place. And I believe that's where we're headed. So I changed sort of my approach to life. And that's that I want to be a weapon. I want to use every resource, every God-given talent that I have to make a difference and to be one of those people that actually changes things, not just sits around and waits for somebody else to do it. I want to help fix it. So that's where sort of the naive belief, I guess, is based, that we can do anything in this country. I really think we can, and we can fix this problem. It just takes, looking at things from a new approach and doing so in a way that, sort of is cohesive with where our country can go. And I think that requires a lot of different sensibilities that a lot of people have. Well, they just have to put it together.
You're going about it in a very clever way, because you did not, your last name is Starbuck, but you did not start with a company like Starbucks, where they're very woke and kind of unapologetically woke and annoying. You started with companies that have very large working class bases, maybe more conservative bases, or at least large percentage of their customer base would be made up of potentially red staters, like Harley-Davidson. And when I first saw your reporting that Harley-Davidson had gone woke, I was like, how on earth did this happen? If I'm not mistaken, you reported that a new CEO took over and decided to wokeify the joint. And so how did you find that out? How did you find out that they'd gone woke? And then tell us what you did about it.
So our stories are predicated off of whistleblowers. That's where we always start. We've got well over 5,000 at this point, but we're always welcoming new ones who can email us and give us the information on what's going on at their company, and we investigate and run down what works. But as to your first point, because it's very important, our approach is very different. I identified what has failed in past boycotts. Number one was a failure to understand that the number one chief PR response to a boycott is, let's wait for this to blow over. Secondary to that was the old media model, where they could go, okay, we're going to go to the big media outlet where the people who will care about this watch, we're going to say, we'll double our ad spend, we'll triple our ad spend, do not cover the story, kill it. And that used to traditionally work. But the reality, is very different now. There's been a paradigm shift. More people will watch one of my videos exposing a company than watch CNN or MSNBC. Not that that's any great feat with the numbers they're pooling, but it still means something. It's a meaningful change in the way that the media works and the public works in terms of getting information, right? So these companies can't pay me to stop the stories. I would never take money to do that, because for me, I'm ideological. I want to stop the crazy, right? And I think the secondary part of this is, like, we understood that this happened because there was an accelerated period of change after George Floyd. A bunch of executives were captured by the idea that they didn't want to be racist, right? And so they're woke PR and HR people who were in many cases recent college grads, so pumped out by this system that's creating Marxist little activists. They come in and they're like, this is how you can be not racist, right? And so the executives were just like, yeah, sure, do anything. We don't want to be racist. And the end result is what we see today. So what's changed, though, is that we've gone through this 4-ish year period where they've all had to experience the reality of what was brought upon them, okay? And that's not just the executives, but the underlings as well that go way down the line. And so not everybody's an activist in these companies, and they want change too. So you need to give them a reason to change. And so we thought, okay, if they shifted the Overton window that wildly, they took a very, sort of accelerated approach. We need to do one that starts with our people, because these companies know that that people in a certain segment of the population listen to me. So let's start with those people and build the momentum and the movement from there. Because if we're able to shift the major corporations that depend largely on conservative consumers, then we can shift to the 50-50, sort of jump ball companies where they depend on both sides. Because if you're a public company, you still can't afford to lose, 20, 30, 40% of your customer base, let alone the majority. And so for those companies, a similar equation sort of comes and presents itself to them. Are you going to knowingly anger a large portion of your customer base and potentially lose them? And at that point, if we pull out to like an eagle eye view, what we're going to see is that the vast majority of companies have come to sanity, and the crazy ones are the ones on the left still adopting these ideologies. So that's why we focused on those companies on the right. But in the case of like Harley, they're like any other company that we focused on. We had whistleblowers that let us know what's going on. And then we have an amazing investigative research team. And we research like you would not believe. Megyn, we find videos that like 3 people have ever seen, and it's painstaking, and I'm glad people appreciate it because the amount of hours that goes into watching these mind-numbing interviews with DEI professionals is it's really something. So, but we do it for the people because we need change.
Must be horrible. All right, here's a little sample of Robby's takedown of Harley-Davidson in July. SOT 30.
Y'all, this may be the most shocking expose that I've done simply because the brand is so out of alignment with their customers. This is Harley-Davidson. Harley's words, they are all in on diversity and inclusion. Now, let's take a look at what that means. I wonder how many Harley riders are aware that Harley-Davidson is a platinum founding member of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce in Wisconsin. This is the same chamber that says on behalf of the businesses that are a part of the Wisconsin LGBT Chamber, they opposed banning transgender sex changes for children. Harley-Davidson even hosted an LGBTQ plus boot camp at their corporate offices, and look at that sweet cake they got them. Isn't that just so inclusive? Harley-Davidson's CEO. Well, it's another CEO that was placed right around COVID.
Jochen Zeitz is an unusual choice to lead Harley-Davidson. He's German. He's an outspoken climate activist.
The businessman who uses his millions to change opinions on climate change. Are you getting Harley-Davidson vibes yet?
Well, it worked. What happened?
Harley-Davidson shifted their policy. We were able to get them, at the beginning, we thought if there was a company that was going to dig in their heels, it was going to be this one because their CEO was the first true believer we encountered at the CEO level. He founded something called the B Team with Richard Branson. And the B Team's explicit purpose is to replace leaders in America and in major global corporations with new woke leaders who are going to adopt a new idea of what capitalism is. Because there's also this whole area of Harley that we exposed where the CEO explicitly wants to sort of destroy the old idea of capitalism and bring forward a new one, which is really just like some rebranded form of Marxism where you have sort of the mask and appearance of capitalism, but in truth, you act as a social activism organization. So, I mean, everything from A to Z with Harley was absolutely absurd. The desire by the CEO to have them go all electric by 2030, just ludicrous. They wanted to dig in their heels and say, no, we're going to stick the path here. But we timed it really well. We timed it before Sturgis. So that's the biggest biker event in the country, maybe the world. 90% of the riders there are Harley riders. And what happened? It was a massive embarrassment. Our story reached out so far and wide that it was a ghost town at the Harley tent, which is usually the busiest event there, is their tent system they've got there, okay? Bloomberg ends up reporting 2 days early before Sturgis ends, Harley packed up their tents and left because it was such an embarrassment. And so the public embarrassment and the videos going viral of bikers taking the emblems off their bikes. And we had all these biker influencers just impassioned
Stand by,
by what
we have a little of that. We have a little sample
everything.
of one of those bikers. Let me toss to it and then you pick it up.
This guy is as woke as you can get, okay? He's a completely DEI executive. He has put diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything he does at the company. He literally forced all white men only into white men only diversity training. Can you imagine? This guy hates what Harley-Davidson customers are. Most people I talked to said they will not buy any new Harleys or Harley anything until this CEO is fired, okay? And I'm one of those. I will not buy anything with Harley-Davidson on it until this guy is gone.
Amazing. Okay, keep going.
I thought you were going to play the video where they blew up a Harley. I thought that was pretty cool. They did that twice, actually. They blew up an actual Harley, where I'm not advocating people do that because it's kind of a waste of money, but it was definitely entertaining. You know, in the case of this CEO, he was just such a radical, and he's really the missing piece still, because we got all the policies wiped out, but he's technically still there. And there is a large segment of dealers and riders who are very, very upset and want him gone still. And I think there's a lot of work to that effect. And if you look at like sort of some of the statements he made, he referred to himself as the Taliban of sustainability. Okay, so sustainability is like the buzzword for wokeness that they use. And calling yourself the Taliban of it in a way where, you know, you're not saying, I'm not that. You're actually referring to yourself in a positive way, like that's how people see me. That tells me, you know, functionally that you consider yourself some sort of terrorist willing to do anything for the cause you believe in, right? Because that's what the Taliban is. So, you know, they can try to say, oh, it's, you know, some careless wordsmanship, but he did it multiple times. And I don't think it's carelessness. I actually believe that that is the case, because they seem so dedicated, the people like him that are true believers, to this idea that it is their right and their duty to shove their ideology down everybody else's throat at work. I don't accept that. I think that's not only wrong, I think it's absurd. And beyond that, what you said at the very beginning of this, in many cases illegal. One of the cases that we're looking at right now involves a company where in hiring, you'll see the names of people they're considering. And what is right next to their names in every case? Their race and their sex. Why would that ever need to be the very first thing that you see as a hiring manager is what color the person is, when we have anti-discrimination laws on the books for a very long time? And this is like a big, you know, civil rights fight that already occurred. You're never supposed to consider race in hiring or firing, and you shouldn't. And so I think it's important for people.
All you get is now, if you're a white male trying to seek a job out of colleges, we went in a different direction. We went in a different direction. And then you wait, and then you see what direction that was, and it was 100% not a white guy.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's important people understand that when you look at this ideology, you know, it's all meant to subvert the truth. So DEI, like any other sort of Marxist term, it's meant to say something that it doesn't actually mean, right? It means something totally different. Nothing about it means diversity. There's nothing diverse about the exclusionary tactics used by DEI teams. Equity is a Marxist concept that is the enemy of excellence. And then inclusion, I don't think very many Christians or white people or Jews feel very included in the DEI policies that are at most major corporations today. It's pretty much all catering to the radical left. And so I think for us, the key is highlighting exactly how this is the definition of unfairness. I mean, if you look no further than the HRC.
Let me move it forward a little bit, because I don't have you for that long a time. I know the current effort is with Black & Decker. And by the time you got to them, this movement had built up so much momentum and such a rep that my understanding is they caved without you even having to do the video. Is that true?
That is correct. So did Jack Daniels, so did Lowe's, and so did Ford. So we're at this stage now where a lot of the companies are just like, okay, we give, here's the changes, just we don't want the video, right?
Why do you think that is? Like, what is it? Just that everything with Harley was so effective, or is there something else going on here?
I think that Tractor Supply, John Deere, and Harley were so effective, and we showed not only could we move, you know, purchasers, customers, but that we could move the market. Because like in the case of Tractor Supply, they had a loss of almost $3 billion in market cap. John Deere was almost $10 billion would be. And in Harley's case, you know, there was this massive public outcry. And in every one of those cases, you're talking about hundreds of millions of impressions in our campaigns. It was more effective than a national ad campaign that the company would do and spend a lot of money on. And we spent pretty much nothing. And all of this is self-funded or with the help of subscribers on X who are subscribing $5 a month. So like, you know, for us, when we see the numbers and see the outcomes, it's the same thing the executives at other companies are seeing. And they're going, okay, our choice is either to go through that for a month, this prolonged period, and lose this segment of customers who are now activated to realize their wallet is a weapon, or we can just give into the changes. It's a much lower view count then. And as a byproduct of that, some people will actually be happy with us because we did this. Because I think they also looked at how did the left respond to those companies caving? Number one, the market did not punish them. In every case of these public companies turning on wokeness, their stock actually went up the day that we announced it. Secondary to that, the left's activism arm arm is not as powerful as they once thought it was. The emperor now has no clothes. They used to be afraid of these groups like the HRC. They're now realizing that the HRC is toothless. We have far more people and far more influence than the HRC's ever had. I hate calling them that, though.
Because they're the ones who give out this score that all the companies want on just how woke and annoying they are. And you've defanged them. I mean, they've defanged themselves with their absurd positions too, but they are defanged. This HRC score no longer seems that important, at least not to these major corporations, some of which we just named.
Yeah, I think many of them are just trying to figure out how to get out from under it in the quietest way possible, because these scoring systems, that's how you're getting things like children having these, quote, transitions funded by healthcare policies that their parents have through work, where they're providing puberty blockers and hormone treatments and, God forbid, double mastectomies. And this is something the HRC wants from employers, is for them to do this coverage. They also want them to do these events at work that are openly sexual. And here's the thing, too, for people who are kind of middle of the road and are like trying to identify where are we at with this movement? Is it because we hate people or what? No, I'm a minority myself. I'm Latino. Aside from that, none of this is born out of hate for gay people. This is just a reality that your sexual preferences or orientation or proclivities don't belong in the workplace. And I don't want to fund it as a customer. I don't want to fund anything having to do with anybody's sex life as a customer of some, Tractor Supply, let's say. I've got cattle and chickens. I don't want to pay for your Pride event. I don't want to pay for, the trans meetup down the street. That's not my job, and it shouldn't be the company's job either. We need to get all these divisive issues out of the workplace, out of the shopping experience, so everybody feels like they can belong again.
You go to Lowe's, you think you're buying lumber. You don't think you're paying for somebody's sex life to change or to chop off breasts on a 13-year-old. I mean, it's like this stuff doesn't get disclosed, and you're doing a great job of exposing it. So it sounds to me like a lot of these CEOs are kind of relieved that you knocked on their door and gave them an excuse to get rid of this stuff. Here's one thing I read that I thought was really interesting. I can't remember if it was multiple companies or just one, but the reporting was that suddenly their donations went from, we're donating to whatever LGBTQ or GLAAD or whatever, to military and pets. Two of the causes we can all agree on no matter where we are on the spectrum of politics.
Well, I can tell you this. I've been asked the question by multiple executives, where do you think we should be spending our money? And I said, I could do the selfish thing and say all these causes I believe in. But I really, truly believe that the best place for us to go as a country, if we want a healthy country, is for things to be neutral. And I said, so pick the things everybody agrees on, like supporting our veterans, supporting people who really need help, supporting families in need, supporting animals, and supporting, there's this great program down the street from me where they do equine therapy for disabled kids and stuff like that is fantastic. Nobody has a problem with it. And if they do, they're crazy. So just don't worry about losing them as a customer, right? But that has been one of the wonderful things we've seen, is these companies going from supporting these radical organizations that wanted trans children, and now they're supporting these very unifying things that I think make us stronger and really more cohesive. And at the end of the day, one of the important things I want to get across here is that this all happened because of one of the biggest mistakes conservatives have ever made, and it was embracing the idea of being a silent majority, and in fact, celebrating it. We should never do that again. It allows a very loud, angry, radical group of people to control the conversation and the direction of our country. It is on us to do the work in our own communities, to speak up and to understand that every individual can make a sizable difference. Never use the excuse that you're not enough or you can't make a difference. Every single one of us can. Every single one of these stories is because each individual along the chain believed they could make a difference. And that's how we're getting these policies changed.
Silent no more. That's going to have to be the motto. If she wins, you have no choice. You have no choice. But even if she doesn't win, this is a great fight worth fighting. You want to give us any hint? I hear you're working on a big campaign right now. Talk us through what you're working on at the moment to the extent you can, and where this goes for you. Who's on deck? What kinds of corporations?
Well, we're not going to stop. One of the ideas, we've sort of built our thesis around how to be successful with this is, that you can never attack as a pack. You need to go one by one. Any animal, and these corporations are animals, they're stronger in a pack, right? So never go at them as a pack. Go at them individually where they have to answer for what they've done. And that's kind of our job, is educate on each individual company and what they've done, and do so in a measured way where we can kind of go down the line from the ones that depend on us to the 50-50s to the rest. And so we're doing that one by one. I can tell you this, there's a company coming this week that has a market cap over $150 billion that will be making an announcement about changes to their DEI and woke policies. And they are not the only one. We've been busy on the phones with executives, and we're going to continue to release a cascade of these great news stories where companies are flipping from these crazy policies and embracing the idea of neutrality and fairness, and really, most importantly, merit again. That's what all of this should be based off of. If you're looking to get a job or you're hiring people, merit should be your number one concern. And that's what we're stressing to these companies. However, there is one special big one we're working on, and I will send you information on that privately because we would love to not only have your help, we're going to ask for the help of all of my friends in this side of the world in media, so that we can make our voices heard very clearly with a David versus Goliath fight that I think will define what happens in corporate America.
There's so many of us who
forward.
would be delighted to help you with our Twitter followings and so on. I've seen some of it just organically, and I always retweet it, but you should have us all on speed dial so that we can help you. I mean, I know a lot of very big presences on X who would love to help you. And listen, to the listening audience, it's Robby Starbuck. .com/DEI if you would like to help him. $5 a month on that X account does not sound like a lot of money toward this cause. It was such a good one. Robby, thank you. Thanks for all you're doing. Sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you covering it.
Oh, that's great. Great. This is the future. Speaking of the future, the fellas from Ruthless are here tomorrow. That's our future. We'll see you then.